Hello and welcome to the Business Interview. I'm Markus Karlsson. Average annual growth of more than 10% or 200% growth over 10 years. Those figures would make most businessmen and women envious in these tough economic times. But my guest today achieved just that when he was the head of the world's biggest furniture retailer. Anders Dalvig was chief executive of IKEA from 1999 until 2009 when he stepped down. He remains active in business as board member of the retailer Kingfisher. He's also become a writer and came out with the IKEA Edge, building global growth and social good at the world's most iconic home store last year. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Markus.
Now, your book, it's a mixture between your own story, the story of IKEA, as well as a management guide, I suppose you could say that. Why did you want to write that?
Well, having spent 26 years with the company, 10 years as a CEO, I thought that I had the ambition to really reflect on my learnings over these years and felt it could be an idea to share my findings, if you like, and reflections on what makes a successful company. So I've tried to make it more of a bit of a management book, if you like, but of course you get the story of IKEA as part of that.
And your point is that it's possible to do good business while also being a business that does good. Why is that an important message?
Well, in this day and age, I think one of the big problems we have is that the trust in business in general is deteriorating, and I think many research and interviews have shown that. And the question, of course, is why? And I believe that it's really important that business and society work hand in hand to solve the big issues of our world, like poverty and climate change, etc. But if trust is going down, you can ask yourself, why is that happening? Why is the trust in business deteriorating? And I think one reason for that is that the values of society is changing. You do not longer, it's not enough for business just to make money for its owners. Society expects more from business. And that's the problem here, is that many business people see a conflict here. Making money for the owners and serving society. It's difficult to do both. I think what I'm trying to show in this book is that it is possible to combine the two, and actually doing good for society not just helps you, it's actually increased profitability of the company. That's really one of my main points.
And you speak about the need to have a good corporate culture. At IKEA, that corporate culture includes price consciousness. It includes encouraging employees to be creative, also giving people responsibility at an early stage in their career. Does that model, does it work everywhere?
I think it could. I think one thing that was special in IKEA was that we felt that the values was a really important part of the success story of IKEA, and maybe more than many other companies. So we did invest a lot in that. How we introduced people into the company, how we trained them, how we promoted them, that the culture was an important part of it. So I think that was one aspect. And another important aspect when looking at cultures is that you need to speak to the very basic needs of people in your company culture. Needs like recognition, needs like togetherness, needs like giving people the opportunity to grow. And I think many companies make a mistake here, that they talk too much about business drivers in their values systems. You should be customer focused, you should be business minded, and fancy words like that. And I think that doesn't really turn people on. I think what makes people want to work for the company, enjoy going to work, feeling motivated, are looking for very basic human needs in your values and your culture. And that was something that IKEA really did.
You also speak about the need to have a flat organization and for there to be an informal culture between, for instance, managers and ordinary employees. For me, I'm Swedish myself, so for me that sounds like something very, very Swedish. But does it work in other cultures as well? IKEA it's present, for instance, in China and Japan.
Yeah. But I think that informality works because what it really does is that it speaks to respect and recognition of people. That's what it is about. When you treat people like you would like to be treated yourself, when you try to take away all the invisible barriers between managers and co-workers, such as special clothes or private chauffeurs or private parking or special canteens for the managers, etc., you get closer to the people on the floor, you know, and they feel they are respected, and you build a relationship with your co-workers that I think is extremely important for the business. And that I think was very important to IKEA, and that works in all cultures. Mm-hmm. If you're Chinese, you like that, or if you're Swedish, it doesn't really matter. So many of the values are basic needs for people that are the same in all countries, irrespective if you're Chinese, Swedish, Russian, or whatever you are. And that I think is a secret, that not all companies have a culture that works in all types of countries. Mm. And there have been many examples of that. I think of companies who had a problem with their culture moving into other countries. So it is a very important point, I think, if you want to be global and grow in many markets.
There are times, though, when IKEA's corporate culture, it seems to fail. For instance, here in France, IKEA has had to admit that managers spied on employees as well as on some customers. Mm. How do you deal with that kind of failure?
Well, this happened after I left, so on this specific issue, I have difficult making any comments on that. There are failures in big organizations, even IKEA obviously happens, whether it's in France or it could be in other markets as well. I mean, IKEA had 125,000 employees when I left, so obviously things go wrong from time to time. But I think the important thing, of course, is when those situations occur, that the management react and show the internal in the organization that it's important to act according to the values and act accordingly towards those people concerned. And how that has worked out here in France, I'm not sure, but I think that's an important thing.
There were other complaints, though, when you were the head of IKEA, for instance, when it comes to child labor, when it comes to illegal logging. Still, though, a lot of people say that IKEA, it's like a Teflon pan, that nothing seems to stick. Do you agree with that? Did you feel like that was the case when you were chief executive?
Well, things stick, but I think you are right in the sense that some of the criticisms we've got over the years blew over, if you like, fairly quickly. And I think one reason for that is that there is a grounded trust in the company, both among employees and the customers. So we do mistakes, or we did mistakes, and we probably will in the future too. I mean, no one is perfect. But I think if most people at least believe that genuinely the company wants to do right, but they made a mistake, and then they do something about it, then I think you have a chance to put it behind you and move on. And I think that's how it doesn't stick with IKEA. That you know, over many years we have proven that in many other actions that we did the right thing, and I think that's why it didn't stick.
But you say that it doesn't stick because IKEA, at the end of the day, wants good. A lot of companies say that. Why should we believe IKEA?
Well, I think the reason is that we prove it in actions in many ways. I mean, we do good in the sense that IKEA provides good stuff or good home furnishing at very low prices, which I think is a social ambition, if you like, to provide good design and functionality for people with limited financial means. And I think anyone who walks to an IKEA store will probably agree that in actions that also happens. I think in many other areas, IKEA has shown, for instance, in the environmental issues, that, you know, they do a lot of things, and things like that has been recognized by NGOs, by authorities, by media from time to time, and also the customers. So we have to obviously prove, or the company has to prove in actions that it's not just words. And if we hadn't, I think it wouldn't be a Teflon company, if you like. You know. So I think most people still think that actually IKEA has proven that.
Now, as I said at the beginning, you're still active when it comes to business. You're a board member of Kingfisher, which owns B&Q in the UK, and Castorama here in France. What do you make of the retail environment at the moment? When you look around you, seeing, for instance, the Eurozone debt crisis, what do you make of the retail environment at the moment?
I think it's a really tough environment for traditional retail sectors like DIY, home furnishing, fashion, electronics, all these traditional retail sectors. Especially in Europe, I think in most markets these sectors are already saturated. There's too many players. I think a lot of the consumption is moving into other sectors like electronics, I mean in terms of internet and PCs and laptops, medical, travel, a lot of other sectors. And it's tough for these sectors, and it will be, because in my view we will have tough times for the next 10 years probably in Western Europe. So the best will survive. Some people will go out of business, most definitely, those who doesn't re-innovate their model. And I think the pressure on improving your offer in terms of price and quality will be there for the coming years. I think any big retailer would do well to be able to expand into emerging markets now, because I think the Western European...
That's the key for survival.
Yeah, over the long term. I mean, of course, because Western Europe will not grow specifically, and it will be a tough environment. People will have less money to buy, and I think big retailers need to find new markets if they want to be a fast-growing companies, and that would be outside Western Europe, definitely.
All right, Anders Dalvig, unfortunately our time is already up. Thanks very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us here at France 24.
Thank you.
And with that, we're going to wrap up the program. Thanks for watching, and do stay with us. We have more news coming your way.